The hooves thunder closer. 6,000 Portuguese soldiers stand behind makeshift trenches, watching 30,000 Castilians march toward them through the August heat. King John I knows what everyone else knows. This is impossible. His army outnumbered 5-1. His country 3 weeks old. His crown still warm from the coronation. And somewhere in that approaching wall of armored knights and French cavalry rides the man who wants to take everything. This is Aljubarrota, August 14th, 1385. And Portugal is about to fight the most important hour of its existence. The stakes are not complicated. Lose here, and Portugal ceases to exist. Not as a concept, not eventually, today. King Juan of Castile marches with a contract signed by dead kings and a wedding ring on his finger connecting him to the Portuguese throne. He has lawyers, he has treaties, he has the Pope, his favor, and he has the largest army the Iberian Peninsula has seen in a generation. John of Portugal has fishermen and farmers dressed as soldiers, 200 English archers who barely speak Portuguese, and a 25-year-old general named Nuno Alvarez Pereira who everyone thinks is insane. If the Portuguese break, Lisbon falls by morning. If Lisbon falls, the kingdom becomes a province. The maps get redrawn. The language gets erased. Everything ends today. 6 hours earlier, Pereira made a decision that confused his own officers. The Castilians are exhausted. They marched since dawn under blazing sun. Heavy armor turning their bodies into ovens. Mail shirts holding heat like furnaces. Helmets cooking brains. Men vomiting inside closed visors. Common sense says wait. Let them camp. Let them rest. Attack at dawn when they are scattered and hungover and stumbling. Pereira does the opposite. He moves his entire army south to a tiny chapel called São Jorge and starts digging. Not tomorrow. Not in an hour. Right now. Trenches. Pits. Wooden stakes driven into earth. Caltrops scattered in patterns only his engineers understand. He is building a trap in full view of the enemy, daring them to walk into it while they watch. His captains ask what happens if the Castilians just go around them. What happens if Juan sees the trap and refuses the bait? Pereira points at the road to Lisbon, now completely exposed behind them. If Juan ignores this position, the Portuguese army hits him from behind while he sieges the capital. If Juan tries to split his forces, Pereira destroys them piecemeal. Juan has no choice. He has to fight here. He has to fight now. And he has to fight exhausted, watching Portuguese soldiers dig his grave in real time. The Portuguese work like madmen. Shovels bite earth, axes fell trees. Young nobles who have never held a shovel in their lives dig trenches alongside blacksmiths and fishermen. Blisters open, hands bleed. Nobody stops. They can see the Castilian banners on the horizon, getting closer. They can hear the rumble of 30,000 men marching in step. The sound is like distant thunder that never stops. Some of the Portuguese are praying. Some are silent. Some are laughing with the brittle edge of men who know they might be dead by sunset and need the noise to feel human. Pereira walks the line, checking positions, adjusting angles. His face shows nothing. 25 years old and he looks like he has been doing this his entire life. Calm. Certain, terrifying in his confidence. Soldiers watch him and think maybe, just maybe, he knows something they do not. Maybe he sees a path through this that nobody else can see. Or maybe he is just better at hiding his fear. Either way, it works. The panic that should be spreading stays locked inside individual chests instead of becoming contagious. The Portuguese position looks random until you see what Pereira sees. The hill slopes gently toward the north, steep toward the south. Streams cut across both flanks, turning the battlefield into a funnel. The only approach forces the Castilians into a narrow front, compressing their numbers into a killing corridor. Behind the trenches, Pereira places his dismounted knights in a square formation, shields locked. On the left flank, 200 unmarried young nobles position themselves with a nickname that will haunt history: the Wing of Lovers. On the right, the English longbowmen string their war bows and wait. Nobody speaks. Nobody moves. The Castilians appear on the horizon, and the Portuguese realize the reports were wrong. The enemy is not large. The enemy is infinite. Juan sees the defensive position and knows it is bait. Knows it is designed to break cavalry. Knows attacking uphill into trenches while his men can barely stand is suicide. His advisors tell him to wait, to camp, to let the Portuguese bake in the sun while Castilian forces recover. But he also knows hesitation looks like fear, and fear spreads faster than plague. His young captains are already shouting about Portuguese cowardice, about how a real king does not hide behind ditches, about honor, about glory, about everything except the reality of 6,000 men willing to die on this hill to stop 30,000. Juan feels the pressure of their stares, the weight of his own reputation. He conquered half of Iberia. He has royal blood and papal blessing and the finest cavalry in Europe. He has French knights who fought at Crécy and survived. He has 30,000 men. Pereira has 6,000 farmers playing soldier. Mathematics should not lose to geography. Pride should not bow to practicality. Juan gives the order. The Castilians advance. And immediately, everything goes wrong in slow motion. The vanguard moves first. French mercenaries in pristine armor. Professional soldiers who have done this 100 times. They know what they are looking at. No, those are trenches designed to break charges. No, those wooden stakes will gore horses. No, this is going to be ugly. But orders are orders and cowardice is worse than death. So they march. The ground looks solid until horses step on it and crash through hidden branches into pits 3 feet deep. The screaming starts before the fighting does. The front ranks hit the first line of wolf pits, and horses scream in a pitch that sounds almost human. Legs snap with sounds like wet wood breaking. Riders pitch forward, full plate armor turning them into anchors. They hit ground and cannot get up, cannot roll, cannot breathe. The cavalry tries to navigate around them, bunching together, losing formation, creating a compressed target that archers dream about. Then the English longbowmen start shooting, not at the knights, at the horses. Warbows pull 150 pounds. Arrows punch through horse flesh like paper. 180 arrows per minute from 200 bows. The math is simple and horrifying. 36,000 arrows in 60 seconds, all aimed at unarmored animals screaming in pain and terror. Horses collapse mid-stride. Knights in full plate armor hit the ground and cannot get up fast enough because armor designed to stop swords was never designed for standing up from prone position in mud. The ones behind them cannot stop in time. Momentum is a law. The charge becomes a pile-up. Metal crashing into metal. Men drowning in their own armor. Bodies stacking on bodies until the dead become obstacles for the living. But the Castilians keep coming because they have to. Retreat under arrow fire is death. Advance is death. Standing still is death. So they choose the only death that looks like courage. French knights in the vanguard reach the trenches and start crossing on the bodies of their own dead, using corpses as bridges. The Portuguese square holds, spears bristling forward, but the pressure is immense and growing. Men in the front rank feel the weight of the entire Castilian army focused on a 100-foot section of line. They can smell the Castilian sweat, can see their faces, can hear them breathing behind visors. Shields crack under axe blows. Spears shatter against armor. Blood turns the ground into paste that makes standing impossible. Men slip, fall, get trampled by their own side. And, for a moment, it looks like mathematics will win anyway. The Portuguese center bends backward, step by step, giving ground they cannot afford to lose. Pereira sees it happening, sees the square compressing, sees men dying faster than they could be replaced. He has reserves, but using them now means having nothing left when the second wave hits. This is the moment generals pray they never face. The moment when every option is wrong. Then the wing of lovers charges. 200 Portuguese nobles, every single one unmarried, every single one with something to prove. They hit the Castilian right flank at full speed, and what should be a skirmish becomes a collapse. The Castilian line bends, then breaks. Panic moves like lightning. Knights who survived the arrows in the trenches suddenly realize they are surrounded by screaming Portuguese, cut off from their own reserves, and the sun is setting. The battlefield darkens. Nobody can see who is winning. Nobody knows where their officers are. Men start running without orders, and running becomes contagious. In the center, a Portuguese soldier named Vasco loses his spear and finds himself face to face with a French knight twice his size. The knight raises his sword. Vasco drops to his knees in the mud, grabs the knight, his legs, and pulls. The knight topples backward, helmet filling with blood from a neck wound nobody saw happen. Vasco stands, covered in mud and someone else's blood, and realizes he is still alive. Around him, men are doing the same thing, surviving, 1 second at a time, breathing, stabbing, crawling. The grand strategy has dissolved into 1,000 small fights, and somehow, impossibly, the Portuguese are winning most of them. King Juan watches his vanguard disintegrate and sends in his second wave. Heavy cavalry, the best knights in Castile. They charge the same trenches, trip over the same pits, die under the same arrows. The pattern repeats. The Castilian advantage in numbers becomes a disadvantage in space. Too many men trying to fight in too narrow a corridor. They crush each other. They block their own archers. They turn the Portuguese trap into a slaughterhouse with themselves as cattle. And still they keep coming, because stopping now means admitting the dead died for nothing. The Portuguese are exhausted. Pereira can see it in their eyes. Can see arms shaking from holding shields too long. Can see men swaying on their feet, drunk on adrenaline and terror. But he can also see the Castilians are worse. They have been marching since dawn. They have been fighting uphill for an hour. They are dying in front of trenches they cannot cross and cannot retreat from. Pereira makes a calculation that most generals would never risk. He orders a counterattack. Not a big one, just enough. 100 men pushing forward, screaming, making noise. The Castilians, already wavering, interpret the noise as a full assault. Someone shouts to fall back. Someone else runs, and suddenly everyone is running. The retreat becomes a rout. Castilian soldiers throw away weapons to run faster. Knights abandon horses to run faster. Officers scream orders nobody hears. The Portuguese pursue, cutting down anyone too slow or too armored to escape. The streams that protected the Portuguese flanks now trap the Castilians, turning retreats into drownings. Men in full armor step into knee-deep water and sink. Some drown in 6 inches. The battlefield turns into a nightmare of mud and metal and bodies stacked so high they dam the creeks. King Juan barely escapes, his bodyguards forming a wall of bodies while he rides for his life. The next morning, the villagers of Aljubarrota emerge from hiding and find a field that does not look like a field anymore. It looks like an abattoir. Castilian dead everywhere. 4,000 killed in the battle. 5,000 more hunted down overnight by locals who remember Castilian raids, Castilian sieges, Castilian threats to burn Lisbon to ash and salt the earth. Farmers with pitchforks, bakers with cleavers, wives with kitchen knives. The professional soldiers ran from professionals. They did not expect the civilians. The stories blur into legend almost immediately. A baker woman named Brights de Almeida supposedly kills 7 Castilian soldiers with her bare hands, 6 fingers on each hand, giving her inhuman strength, and bakes their bodies in her oven like bread. Historians argue about the details. The villagers do not care. True or not, the message is clear. Portugal does not just survive this battle. Portugal consumes it, devours it, makes it part of the national soul in a way that transcends facts and becomes mythology. The battle becomes a story mothers tell children, a proof that giants can be killed if you are willing to bleed for it. King John walks the battlefield at dawn and sees what victory costs. Nearly 1,000 Portuguese dead, 1,000 families getting news that will destroy them, 1,000 men who woke up yesterday thinking about harvest or marriage or next year, and now they are meat for crows. He sees the Castilian dead piled so high they dam the creeks surrounding the hill. Sees water running red. Sees armor scattered like trash. Sees the material reality of 30,000 men betting everything on overwhelming force and losing to terrain and tactics and English longbows. He offers the survivors amnesty and safe passage home on one condition. Never return. Never set foot in Portugal again. Never even speak the name of this kingdom without respect. The Castilians accept, limping north with their king, leaving behind the bodies of their best knights, their best captains, their best chance of ever controlling Portugal. They leave behind something else too. Their certainty, their sense that numbers always win. That cavalry always breaks infantry. That small nations exist at the mercy of large ones. All of it dies here, in trenches south of a chapel nobody heard of before today. Juan declares national mourning until Christmas of 1387. 2 full years. It takes Castile 2 years just to process the grief, to bury the dead, to explain to mothers and wives why their sons and husbands died in a Portuguese trench for a claim that meant nothing to anyone except lawyers and kings. The political consequences echo for decades. Castile never fully recovers the prestige lost here, never fully rebuilds the nobility gutted on this hill. The power balance in Iberia shifts, and it never shifts back. For Portugal, Aljubarrota changes everything. Not immediately, not obviously, but slowly, like water wearing stone. The impossible victory becomes proof of divine favor, becomes proof that small nations can survive between empires if they are willing to bleed for it, if they are willing to think instead of just swinging swords. John I builds the monastery of Batalla to commemorate the battle. Batalla? Battle. The entire monastery named after one afternoon when 6,000 farmers became an army and 30,000 professionals became a memory. The architecture is Gothic, soaring, designed to make you feel small. The message is the opposite. You are small, and you won anyway. The Anglo-Portuguese alliance, forged in panic weeks before the battle when John needed anyone willing to send soldiers, becomes the oldest continuous alliance in world history. Still active today, still binding 641 years later. English longbowmen stood on Portuguese soil and killed Frenchmen fighting for Castile, and from that one afternoon came centuries of mutual defense, shared trade, cultural exchange. The Treaty of Windsor in 1386 makes it permanent. Portugal and England, bound by the memory of 200 archers who changed history by shooting horses. But the real legacy is not political. It is psychological. Portugal learns it can win against impossible odds, learns that clever tactics beat larger armies, learns that defensive positions and disciplined fire can shatter cavalry charges that should be unstoppable. These lessons echo into the Age of Discovery. Portuguese ships navigate coastlines nobody else dares approach because Aljubarrota taught them that impossible just means difficult. The same nation that defeated Europe's finest cavalry with ditches and farmers goes on to map half the planet. The confidence comes from here, from this hill, from this hour when mathematics stopped mattering and will became everything. 6,000 men stood in trenches and watched 30,000 march toward them, and instead of running, they dug deeper. That is the lesson. Not that Portugal won a battle. That Portugal refused to accept the math, refused to believe numbers matter more than position, refused to let someone else decide their future simply because they showed up with more soldiers. Aljubarrota is the moment Portugal, becomes a nation that believes survival is not about size. It is about will, about choosing the right ground and making the enemy come to you, about turning their strength into weakness and your weakness into advantage. If you made it this far, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more military history that feels like you lived through it. And drop a comment. Do you think small nations today can still pull off an Aljubarrota? Can tactics and terrain still beat overwhelming numbers in modern warfare? Or has technology made these kinds of victories impossible? Let me know what you think.